Now you have to do it.
Hey, friends, we're back again. We're with another special guest. Mitch Axelrod is with us.
Are we on?
Mitch
Are
is
we actually
here.
on?
We're on. You have to put your shirt on now. We're on.
Oh, okay. We didn't do a sound check.
I didn't do a sound check. I didn't have to do it.
Okay.
Mitch has been a longtime friend. I met him at a dinner one night with our friend Ken MacArthur.
Oh,
we met at a hotel, and he was having the crab bisque, and I was having the meatloaf. I don't know what we were having. It was a long time ago, but it was
goodness,
good.
You have some memory.
Yeah, I imagine if that were true. So Mitch can best be described as the small hinge that moves big doors. And for many years, Mitch has been selling his content, not his services, selling his content to the insurance industry, right? New York Life, Mutual.
Yeah, probably 10, 12 insurance companies.
10, 12 insurance companies.
Our stuff.
He learned early on that if you put your content on a cassette tape, if you print it in a book, your content gets, to use his words, trapped. Mm-hmm. And he decided that a better way to do it is have somebody else pay for publishing the content. And what he did, he sold licenses to it, which is brilliant. You sell the IP, the intellectual property, and instead you get paid for that. And I think you did quite well back then, didn't you? Yeah, you did okay. So he's been coming along and teaching that. He's been teaching a lot of speakers that kind of process. And it's lost on a lot of speakers because so many of us have been conditioned to, well, you got to create a CD or a DVD, or you got to write a book. And that's what we keep hearing over and over again. But I think with Mitch's content, he's a little bit above that. And he teaches, a different level when you're talking about intellectual property. Nobody thinks about their stuff.
Oh, like that's so 2010.
Well, yeah.
Info products are so 2010.
Yeah, literally.
Or
right?
2019, I should say.
And we're moving into 2020 already.
Yeah.
So Mitch is going to bring us a top 10 list?
Well, you told me I only had time for 5, so. No, I'll give you enough. I sort of started writing down some of my hacks for 2020. And I thought about it from a personal point of view, from a professional point of view, and also from a profit point of view. So I have a few of those I'll share.
Okay. So we're going to get into that, and we'll see if we have time for 10. You've got 5 here on your list.
I do?
Yeah.
Yes, and I have a cheat sheet, too, just in case.
Like, he needs a cheat sheet. Here's a guy who has spoken more than 3,500 times.
That is
Anybody
true.
else?
That is
Anybody
true.
else? Anybody
that is
else?
True. I've done 3,500 talks.
That's a lot of talks.
That's a lot of talks.
But you're from Brooklyn. So
That's 41 years, though, I've been at
that.
this game, so it's a long time. Yeah. So why don't we jump right in?
Why don't we?
Where do you want to start?
Shall we? Let's start at number 1.
Okay, we'll start at number 1. Okay, so this is probably, I started at number 1 because number 1 is like the most important, all right? By the way, there's 2 things you want to know if you're a speaker, recency and latency. People remember what they hear first, and they remember what they hear last. Yep. Everything else in the middle is sort of a blur, right? So you want to make sure you hit them with a good shot up front, and you leave them wanting for more. So let's start with the first one, which is we're at a time now where everybody's talking about goal setting, all right? And Robert and I did a session a few years ago where I talked about a different model that I came upon 25 years ago. I was on the road 100 days as a speaker. My wife and I had divorced, and I didn't want to be a weekend dad, all right? And I had this challenge, and the challenge was my goal was to stay on the road, which I was doing very well. My soul was calling me home to be a full-time stay-at-home dad. And in the middle was my role, all right? And my role was stuck with like, okay, what do? Do I obey my goal, because the goal was a very harsh taskmaster, or do I serve my soul, all right? And it was the first time in my life, after having gone through probably 25 years of personal development, where I realized that our entire success model is upside down. Here's why. If you set your goal, what is your role? Your role is to get your goal. And then if there's any time left over, you nurture your soul. My soul was calling me home, but I couldn't be on the road and I couldn't be home at the same time. So I had to make a decision. And the only way I could resolve this was to do my soul setting first, and then do my role setting, and then do my goal setting. And what I realized in that little moment of time was that if I do my soul setting first, even if I don't get my goal, I'm fulfilled in my soul. And my role, which was to be a full-time stay-at-home dad, right? And so I started to realize that that model that I had been working on, goal, and more goal, then the role is to get the goal, was not fulfilling, it was not serving me, okay? And so by doing my soul setting, then my role setting, and my goal setting, I was able to resolve that. I got off the road. I spent the next 10 years raising my son. and I had to adjust my goals accordingly. So,
And just to give you credit, your son turned out really good. by the way.
well, yeah, I
You know?
think he turned out okay.
He turned out
I don't know
okay.
how I turned out, but he turned out pretty good. But here's the thing about this whole issue of soul setting and role setting, because there's a huge epidemic in our culture right now. Soul frustration, role frustration, and goal frustration, all right? And part of the frustration is that if we set our goals first, but there's a misalignment in the soul and the goal, then the role gets stuck not knowing, do I obey the goal or do I serve my soul? And in many cases, you can do both if you reorganize your life from the soul, role, goal model. But if the goal is the taskmaster, it's a harsh one, your role essentially now is defined by the goal, all right? And so we see that we have a tool, a profile, which I've shared with you. About 70% of us have goal frustration. In other words, the distance between where we are and where we think we ought to be, if that's not a big distance, that's small goal frustration. If there's a big distance, it's a lot of goal frustration. About 60% of us have role frustration, meaning we're not doing what we feel we could be doing, ought to be doing. We're not getting fulfillment or satisfaction. And about 60% of us have soul frustration. And so a big part of my work is to help people to recognize that you can do this on your own subjectively. And if you start to reorganize your life around sort of soul setting, role setting, and goal setting, you might relieve some of this frustration, all right? And then, so to sort of wrap this all up also, it's the difference in terms of your soul, of experiencing things, right? Time with your family. I had my family here from Jersey this week, and we were at the Mission Beach yesterday watching the sunset, and you realize some of the best things in life really are free, right? And those things that you treasure forever are the experiences and the things that you do with your people. So the first thing I would say is give it a shot, you know, maybe for the first time in your life, sit down and do your soul setting, do your role setting, and then do your goal setting, and see what happens. And you may find that it relieves some of the tension and stress this time of year where we put so much pressure on ourselves.
And I think a lot of it's driven too by our media and our society. We're always thinking about, you know, hey, we've got a new year. That means, you know, you should have a whole list of goals that you want to accomplish for the new year. And, you know, I don't hear people talking that much about goal setting as much now than back in the 90s. So it's kind of changed a little bit. But now we're talking resolutions and we're using those different words again. Same idea, though. It's like, what do you want to accomplish? What do you want to have in your life? And I could see the frustration of, you know, like Diane mentioned, it was one of the things that she was feeling dead inside. She had all the goals to achieve, but, you know, the soul was dying. You know, and you have to make that change. So
well, and there's a spillover. One more thing I want to mention: a spillover effect, and that is when we run these profiles, we realize that about 70% of us actually treat other people better than we treat ourselves.
Always, yes.
Okay, so if you're in that 70% of the people who treat other people better, you're more empathetic, you're more compassionate, you're more understanding, you're more accepting, and yet less accepting of yourself, which I'm in that group. I pay much more attention to others. And I realized, well, how do I get to that self? And I realized that self-esteem is actually empathy turned inward. So if you're the kind of person who treats other people really better than yourself.
Mitch, we're gonna need a PowerPoint on this one.
Well, just think about it. It's empathy turned inward. All right, that's all it is
empathy for yourself.
That's right. If you could just be as good to yourself as you are to others, if you're that 70% who treats others better. So there's the first thing, and I'll leave you with this. The core measure of any belief in my world, how I measure it, is very simple. If that belief is not loving and serving me, or that belief is not loving and serving the people I love and serve, then why do I hold on to that? All right, so that's my litmus test now. Any belief that I hold, it's got to be loving and serving me, or loving and serving the people I love and serve. Otherwise, why would I hold on to it? So my big resolution for this year is letting go, particularly the beliefs that don't love and serve me.
Good one. Okay, should we go on to the next?
Sure.
Next goodie you've got for us?
Yeah. So
are we counting down? Is this like
no, we're not counting. I'm just going to sort of wing it here.
We're just kibitzing.
Yeah, we're kibitzing.
Okay, good.
It depends on where you put the accent there. So let's look at the second thing I want to share with you is this formula, this great formula that I developed about 30 years ago. I call it the RAM, R-A-M-M. It's a flight plan for success. Okay, when I got into business 41 years ago, I was selling life insurance. All right, but you know, there was a joke that the fastest way to clear out a room was to walk in and say, "I sell life insurance."
That's right.
And everybody would disappear, you know? And so I had to come up with something different. And I said, you know what? I'm in the transportation business. I help people get from point A to point B financially. Where would you like to go? Okay? And people would say, "Oh my God, you sell life insurance." You know, they yes, and more. Well, I realized that there was actually a success formula. And I call it the RAM, R-A-M, flight plan for success. 4 steps. R, result. Where are you going? You got to know where you're going. You got to know where you are, but you really want to know where you're going.
Right.
Second, A, action. What actions are you taking? So many people are stuck in inaction, inertia, all right? You know, body at rest stays at rest. Body in motion continues indefinitely in the same direction. So if you're not in inaction, you're in inaction or inertia, then I have a chance maybe to help come along and provide some stimulus, right? Third step, measure. Are you on or off course? Many of us don't like to measure because we don't want to know if we're off course or how far we're off course. So you've got to measure both qualitatively and quantitatively. But here's the most important step. If you're off course, you've got to modify. That's the second M in the RAM formula. So if you're really, wherever you are in life, if you're going somewhere, you've got to have a result, end game, action, get the jumbo jet off the ground, measure, use your instruments to adjust with the wind and the currents, right? And then modify, use your senses and use your intuition. And if you just follow that RAM formula, you could almost take it anywhere you want to go. So that's my second tip or hack for the new year is the RAM, your flight plan for success. I feel like I'm going to fall off this stage.
You are
here.
going to fall. Just take one step forward here.
There we
we
go.
don't want you falling.
No,
I need
we
a
don't want
bigger
to go.
stage probably. Is what
No,
I
we're
need,
good.
you know?
We're good. I just have to get my bearings here, see the circle of influence.
And it's always when you have speakers who like to dance around.
Yes,
You have to worry about that.
I'm always in movement. There you go. Hard to sit still.
All right,
All right, third thing. All right, so this is one that came out of my ex-business partner, who still a dear friend, and we still work together.
I know her.
Yes, you do. One day we were sitting down, and she said to me, "Mitch, here's my to-do list, okay?" And there was like 100 things on the to-do list. And I said, "Are you crazy? There's no way you're going to get all that done. We can't possibly do all that stuff." And she says, "But so what do I do?" I said, "Stop right now. Take that list and put it aside." I said, "From this moment on, for the next 21 days, all we're going to do is a got done list." So I said, from the minute you wake up in the morning, no to-do lists, start with the got done list, all right? Why? The got done list gives you energy. The to-do list is like, oh my God. And so for like 21 days, that's all we did. Now, we didn't ignore the to-do list, but we looked at the got done list, and then we went to the to-do list and said, what's the one thing? Just the one thing, all right? And we said, that's it. Mm-hmm. And so after 21 days, she started to feel like, okay, now I don't have to get to this to-do list. Because somehow psychologically we create these to-do lists, and this is a time of year where those to-dos almost never get to done, right. You know, because they keep growing and growing. So I started using that sort of as my model to give me energy instead of draining my energy to look at a list I'll never finish. Now I start to really, and it's not just about checking it off. It's really about appreciating how much we actually get done. Again, back to this lack of self-empathy and self-worth. We're always focused, seems like, on what's not done rather than on what's got done. Okay, so that's a mantra for next year. Don't focus on what's not done. Focus on what's got done. So that's my next.
I like that. You know, from a perspective of motivating yourself, we kind of forget that. We check it off and kind of leave it, right? And that's the end of it.
Yeah.
But I've been doing something similar, and it's like I have this list of things I want to accomplish for the year. And what I've done is made a new list and said things I have accomplished, a similar idea. And I go review that once in a while and say, well, you know, I don't feel like I'm moving forward. Then I go look at that list. I go, oh, I got that, I got that, I got that. And it's like, yeah, it's a nice little boost to the
well, and it gives you energy because there's energy in completion.
Right.
All right. And there's drain of energy
and especially
in incompletion.
Especially important for a man.
Yeah.
More so than a woman.
Well, I would imagine it's just as important in many cases.
Different for a woman.
Maybe different,
yeah.
but that idea of completion, and I'm working with my son on this because he has a lot of stuff going on. And we get what I call pinball brain, right? You're bouncing from thing to thing. You're like,
It's ADHD.
I don't know about that, but again, it's hard to concentrate because you have too much on your
Roberta?
plate.
We'll ask her.
She's got
stepped out.
too many things to do. So in any way, really try that. It's really cool to look at your got done list and start to appreciate the energy that comes from completion. And by the way, in completion, it's okay. I learned a long time ago, it's okay to stop something that you started, because a lot of us believe that if we start something, we have to complete it. And that's not true. There's so many things. It's the incompletions that stay incomplete that you don't cross off your list and say, I'm no longer committed to that, right? So if you get this long list of things, go through and start slashing things that you're not committed to.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Yep.
So work on your got done list, and you'll be surprised at how effective that is. Okay, next thing.
We're not counting, so we don't know.
No, we're not
Could be
counting. I
19.
want to talk about money. I want to talk about two things about money. Can I do that? Okay, I can do that.
I don't know. Should we ask them?
Can we
you guys
do
want
that?
to hear
Can we
anything
talk about money?
Money?
Is
Can
it
we
okay to talk about money?
You know?
Okay. You already brought up intellectual property, all right? 10 years ago this year, I did a talk with Jack Canfield, Brendan Burchard, Tony Alessandri, who were on a panel, and John Kilcullen, who was the Dummies book publisher. And I did 9 minutes, and I said, in the next 10 years, the entire information game is going to be completely transformed into the intellectual property game. Because information is Google's game, it's not our game, all right? And we've taken this information product game as far as it can go, and this is my prediction. And within the next 5 years, you're going to see companies that are going to shift gears. Well, within 5 years, my prediction actually came true. Now you start to look at 10 biggest companies in the world, 80 to 90% of their asset value is in intellectual property, okay? Yeah. Netflix is going to spend $14 billion this year on intellectual property, okay, on programming. You have it, I have it, everybody has this 6 inches, the most valuable real estate in the world, not south of France, not Beverly Hills, not Brooklyn or Manhattan, not San Diego or Del Mar, the 6 inches between your ears, okay? So I predict that the 2020 decade is going to be the decade of explosive intellectual property values. I would predict at least $1 trillion more or more in intellectual property. And by the way, just about 5 years ago, I think it was 5 years ago, the last numbers that came out, $60 billion in royalties were paid on intellectual property.
Wow.
Okay.
Wow.
$60 billion of revenue. So, wow. There's a pinball moment. So you have it, and start to think in terms of taking your intellectual property, deconstructing it, okay, because the parts might be worth more than the whole. All right, and I do a whole...
That was an interesting thing that you brought up, too. It's like we look at, we're going to write a book or we're going to create a course, and we've got all these different chapters in it, and then you brought up the idea that you could actually extract standalone pieces of that and sell that alone rather than selling the whole.
I sold a chapter of my book for 25 grand. I don't know anybody who has sold a chapter of their book for 25 grand or more. All right, because I wasn't thinking in terms of selling my book. I was thinking in terms of each of my chapters is another piece of intellectual property, and that particular individual happened to like chapter 8 in my book, couldn't afford to spend, he had $25,000 to spend, he had 25,000 people. So I could have sold him 5,000 books at $5 and made $2 a book or something. But I said something to him, it's funny, questions are the most powerful things in the world. I said, well, what did you like most about the book? And he said, you're not going to believe this, but it was chapter 8. It was on success abilities, life and business skills. And I said, what if we could give you chapter 8 and you could give it to all 25,000 of your people? And he said, how could you do that? I said, I own the book. So he said, well, how much? And I said, how about $1 per person? And he said, would you do that? And I said, yeah.
Wow.
So I sold a chapter of my book for 25 grand. Why? Because I wasn't selling the book.
And you weren't printing it either. They were taking care of all that.
No, I sent them a PDF. I sold a PDF for 25 grand.
You see, that's why we have him here.
Yeah,
Every
well, that's
year.
what I'm saying is that when you stop thinking sort of trapped by the form, you know, if you go back to essence that created it, the essence has more valuable than the form. And here's the thing. If people like the IP, but they don't like the form, they might not buy it because of the form it's in. So I'll give it to you in any form you want it. I don't care. The IP is here, its essence. The form is the product, right? So that's the first tip.
I'm going to give you a CD. I'm going to give you a PDF. I'm going to give, well, do you have it as a book, a hardcover? You know, it's like, yeah, it gets trapped. You're right.
Yeah, it does. And we get trapped because now we're committed to sell the form of that IP rather than the IP itself. So that's the first money tip. Second money tip, which is like worth its weight in gold. I do a program called the Money Talk. And the Money Talk has 5 levels of pricing, okay? Lowest price is cost, right? Like that's widgets and bag of beans and sugar, commodities. Second is time. A lot of people charge by time. I'm not a person who says never trade hours for dollars. Everybody trades hours for dollars. Come on, that's ridiculous. The idea is to trade your hours for maximum dollars and not trade current hours for potential, maybe eventually I'll have future dollars, which is the info product game, right?
You got that, Chris?
All right. Okay. So with that being said, the third level of pricing is project. Project is like a real estate developer, general contractor, or we do a project for a company, we give a project pricing. That's where 95% of the people in the business game stop. But there's 2 higher levels of pricing, and this is where I try to start. The 4th level is value pricing, okay? I learned this, I learned everything from other people, all right? I'm sitting with a corporate executive.
I think you just watched the MasterCard commercial.
I did that too, yes, I did that too. Priceless.
It's always the third one.
So I'm sitting with a corporate executive, this is 25 years ago, right? And we're talking about a project. And I never like to talk about money because I was very uncomfortable with money. I always liked it when somebody else talked about money first, but eventually you got to get around to money, right? So we're having this conversation, and I said to the guy, just out of curiosity, how much have you got for this project? And he said, about $100,000. And in my head, I was thinking, as he was talking, I'm going to charge about 25 grand for this, because I figured it out, right? So out of nowhere, I said to him, well, geez, how much of that 100,000 did you put aside for me? And he said, about 70,000. Is that okay? And I looked up and I thought for a minute, and I almost had to stop so that, you know, I did not have a spare pair of underwear that day. I said, yeah, that should do pretty well, okay? And I walked out of there and I couldn't believe what happened. However, here's what happened, and it was one of the most valuable lessons I ever learned. I was going to price it based on my pricing structure, which would have been a project pricing. He was paying me based on the value. You get the difference? Mm-hmm. Okay. The value to him, but my value to him was 3 times more than my value to me.
Right. And this is exactly the model that I taught Chris and I taught my coaches, to sell coaching on value, not on time.
Not easy to do. Okay, you really have to be confident. You have to be able to produce a measurable result. I'll tell you one more story, okay? And these stories are what really made me understand that when you're dealing with people who are buying value, they're not buying price, they're not buying project, and they're not buying time, they get to determine the value. You don't get to quote the price. So I stop quoting prices and I start talking value, okay? Guy calls me into New York in 1995. He had just left another company. I had known him for years. He says, Mitch, come into Wall Street. We got to talk. Okay. I said, Jerry, what do you want? He says, Mitch, we talked around the company. We have a big project coming up. We need a speaker in Las Vegas in 30 days.
Wow.
We went around the company and everybody said, hey, hire Mitch. I said, but I'm not in your company. He said, that's exactly why we want to hire you.
Good one. Someone's thinking.
Yes. He says, we have this big project, $100 million. You're the guy we want. And he slides a piece of paper across the table. And on the paper is $25,000. Okay. And I'm saying, Jerry, you know my fee is like 1/3 of this, right? Why are you paying me this? You know, we had a very good relationship. He says, Mitch, because for the next 30 days, you're mine. I don't want you eating, thinking, breathing, anything but me for the next 30 days. We have $100 million riding on this. That is coffee money. By the way, I came up with a term, swizzle stick money. You know the swizzle sticks that was swizzle, this is AIG. This is AIG. That wasn't even swizzle stick money, right? So he said to me, that's what it's worth to us. I know it's more than you've ever been paid for a talk, but that's what it's worth to us. What did I learn? I learned that I'm much more valuable to them than I am to myself. that if I let them determine the value of what I'm bringing and they offer me more than I would have charged, take it.
Don't say no. Get out of the way.
Okay?
Yep.
Get out of the way and take
Absolutely.
it. So that's value pricing.
Yep.
That's where you want to start. Okay? And it's no longer about what does it cost, it's what is it worth. But there's another level of pricing that came around maybe 15 years ago called experience pricing. We all know somebody who's paid $100,000 to be in a mastermind. Not for any particular
$2
outcome.
million to fly in a rocket ship.
Whatever.
Yeah.
That's experience pricing.
Yep.
Okay, now you don't have to take people to Kilimanjaro. You don't have to do a rafting trip. Here's the pricing.
Can I bring them to Carlsbad?
You could bring them anywhere.
Okay.
Here's the key. It's an experience of you. I heard Diane say earlier about uniqueness. That's the key differentiator in the world today, in the business world today. All right, it's not being better or it's being unique. It's being uniquely you. Why it's so easy to be authentic is because if you're being uniquely you, you don't have to think about the facade or the image or anything else. You're just being you, right? The person on the stage shouldn't be any different than the person off the stage if you're being authentic, true and unique, right? So when you start to look at creating an experience of you that they can only get with you, now you could potentially look at experience pricing. And because there's no level to work from, you can pick any number out of the air. Some people pick ridiculous numbers and other people pay it. And the only way you know on experience pricing is if somebody will pay it. So that is the highest level of pricing, but at the very least, try to elevate yourself in any case one level above. If you're doing time, try to go to project. If you're doing project, go to value. All right? And even if you have to come down and combine the two, you're still going to make more money by using those different pricing levels. So there's my money talk for you in a nutshell.
Do you like it? You like it? Yeah, good job,
Good?
Mitch.
All right, I have one more.
Okay.
One more.
This is a bonus one, folks.
Yeah, this is the big Kahuna.
This is the one people are going to remember because they only remember the first one and the last one.
That's right.
Okay.
So
Should
here-
we quiz them on what the first one was?
Yeah, we should do a quiz.
Okay.
Okay. Here's what I realized. I do a lot of work in ROI, right? Return on investment. I actually do ROI times 2. Return of investment. You've got to get return of investment before you can get return on investment. Then you get return on investment, right? But there's 3 other metrics that are far more important. ROE, ROT, and ROL. ROE is return on energy, okay? I'm very conscious of my energy now. Maybe 20 years ago I had a lot more of it. I wasn't quite as conscious. But now I have a little more gray hair and I'm a little bit older and I'm very conscious of how I expend my energy and with whom. I'm an energy source. People plug into me.
Right.
They tend to plug into me. Question is, if you're an energy source, who do you plug into?
Good question.
Right? Who do you plug
Yeah,
into?
good
So
question.
I have to find people I can plug into or I get depleted. That's why I go into my cave because I'm an introvert. That's where I get my energy. So
And I do try to drag him out of his cave once in a while.
sometimes successfully.
always
You
work.
did it very well today. So return on energy. Think about your energy because you only have so much of it, right? I mean, you have to rebuild your energy. That's the first thing. So ROT, it's not rot, okay, but it is rot, and that's return on time. Yeah. So time is hourglass. Time is grains of sand. They don't go back up once they fall. And as you get a little bit
You're making
older,
me think of Days of Our Lives.
yeah, that's true. I remember that. I used to actually watch that. That's very funny that I actually used to watch. I don't know too many guys who used to watch soap operas, but my wife and I actually worked together, and we took like from 12 to 2 to watch soap operas every day, which is really crazy. So ROT, return on time. Okay, this is a big one. People spend their time, they waste their time. They waste their time with people who don't deserve their time. And I'm very cautious now and careful about making sure that I spend my time with the people that I really love and enjoy and doing things that matter to me, okay? And then the last one is ROL, which is return on
Laughter.
life. Return on life. You only get one of them. I don't know what happens in the afterworld, but you only get one of them. And at least in terms of here, it's like, okay, I'm giving up my life for this, right? Richard Bach, my favorite author, had a quote in one of his books. I'm not sure if it was Illusions or One. And he said, you gave up your life to be the person you are now. Was it worth the trade-off? Right? And I always think about return on life, how do I make sure that every moment, every minute of my life, I'm appreciating the fact that I'm alive, Thank God I'm healthy. I can speak. Tell the story, my brother who passed 2 years ago spent the last 15 years of his life talking through a machine and eating through a tube because he lost all this up here, all right? His voice box, his tongue, his teeth, his nasal cavity. He lost it all to cancer. He lost his voice box, but he never lost his voice. He would bang on that machine, no matter how loud it was. He would bang on that machine until people heard him. Okay, what I watched that man go through for the last 15 years of his life changed my life. And I realized that you have a voice. We all have voices, all right? If you can imagine what your life would be one day, he called me into New York. He said, Mitch, I have to go for surgery. And Thursday, this was a Tuesday, he says, I'm going to lose this. I'm never going to eat again. I'm never going to talk again. I said, there's got to be another. And he says, that's it. Imagine if you knew that you were never going to eat again, never going to talk again. What would you want to say right now that you knew you would never get to say? Don't wait. Make it your 2020 mantra to say whatever it is you need to say, because you got to be thankful you have a voice. Right? And so that's sort of my 2020 mantra, is to make sure that I speak my mind, I speak my truth, and I share what matters to me. So I hope I did today for you.
You did that today. Thank you so much for that. And, we bring back that idea of authenticity and being who you are. And I was congratulating Diane. I actually talked to her after we got off the stage, too, and just told her how impactful it was. And now you're doing the same thing. It's like, wow, this is cool. All this energy is coming together. And Chris is starting to do that, too. And then, of course, Jeanette is always authentic. No, I have to compare about her. And so it's an interesting dynamic, that when you come and you're really speaking your truth, you're speaking who you are. And one of the things I learned many years ago is this whole idea of lying, right? I'm not a good liar. So I gave up. I said, I'm not going to lie anymore because I'm not good at it. People can see through it, so I'm not even going to try. And then you have to remember the lies. So, forget it. That's a game I don't want to play. So I try as much as possible to be honest and authentic. And there's so many people who don't get that. They don't get the concept of that, and they're lost. I'm so happy to see you living proof of that.
Well, thank you, Robert.
So you've come along and shared this message, and it's shared from the heart. Clearly, you got the applause of our audience, our esteemed audience.
Heartfelt and well appreciated.
Very much so. So I want to thank you for being here, being part of this event again. And
always my pleasure.
Yeah,
it's one of my favorite
things
I
look
look
for. 2031.
Oh yeah,
okay.
oh yeah. I plan to.
Planning ahead. All right, buddy. Happy New Year.
You too.
Thanks so much. Good to have you here.
Great to be here.
Stay tuned. We still have more to come.